Hey y'all, it's me, Dr. Smina Rahman, Gyno Girl. So happy to present you with another episode of Gyno Girl Presents Sex, Drugs, and Hormones. Welcome to my podcast if you haven't been here before. In my podcast, we explore a lot of patient journeys. A lot of experts come to speak about it, a lot of people in the wellness space. So I'm super excited to introduce to you guys today a new friend of mine that we met a few weeks ago at the Menopausium. And we're going to talk in detail about her journey and discuss everything when it comes to what she does in this space of menopause and sexual health. But this is Gabriella Espinosa. She's a women's health and sexual wellness coach and the host of a wonderful podcast. We're doing podcast switch, she and I. I was just on her podcast, Pleasure in the Pause, which is dedicated to empowering midlife women to own their pleasure, power, and purpose through menopause and beyond. Her work lies at the intersection of embodiment, Eastern traditional wisdom, female sexuality, and menopausal health, and is informed by 15 years of guiding women to know, trust, and appreciate their bodies through one-on-one and group coaching programs, online courses, and international retreats. Learning from her own experience of perimenopause with the lack of knowledge about her body, changing hormones, and what to expect, Gabriella developed a holistic educational and coaching program incorporating yoga, breath work, mindfulness, and sex education to support other women to demystify and navigate the transition into perimenopause and menopause. Gabriella believes menopause is an invitation to know ourselves better and upgrade our physical, mental, and emotional selves to the best version possible. Her guidance takes women on a journey of self-exploration, trust, and knowing, and we do get to the other side wiser, stronger, sexier, and more empowered. I love that. That is awesome, Gabriella. I wish I had a live audience. I'd have them give me an applause.
Thank you, Dr. Rahman. Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here with you today.
Yeah. I'm so excited because, you and I, as we've learned, we have a lot in common, actually. We're both like children of immigrants who came here in the 60s, who landed in the South. We have parents who, really emphasized education over marriage or anything like that. And we both, I think, got married late in our 30s, right? Like we got married in our mid to late 30s and had kids. My last kid, I stopped having children at, 43. So I think we all, we have very similar background in that. And then, of course, I'm in the thick of perimenopause right now. But why don't you tell our listeners, about your journey into perimenopause and menopause and sort of how our culture sort of impacts that. I also want to get into a discussion around you and I are both involved with Liberty Road, which is a group that by Nada Jones, and it's really a great forum where they talk about women in the middle third of their life and shifting into new types of career or social or whatever stuff that's going on. Some people have kids that are grown up and done, and other people are still in the thick of it like me. But how and I want to talk about how you kind of transitioned into the amazing work that you're doing right now. But first, tell us about your journey into perimenopause.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm such a huge fan of yours, and you were on my podcast, and we had a wonderful discussion about the experience of women of color navigating menopause. So, I often reflect about the time I spent in perimenopause and say it was like the light switched off, especially with regards to my libido. I was left totally in the dark, and that time period lasted a good 7 years. And I realized, that darkness, that place is a place that I really needed to go to. It's a place, you hear it a lot, right? It was that place where I just did not feel like myself.
Right.
right? What you hear
Yeah.
from so many
There's a
patients.
whole study on that about
Yes, I
perimenopause and how
heard
it's a
that. I
major,
heard that study. Yeah,
major, major complaint is not feeling like myself. Yeah.
the fatigue, the anxiety, the overwhelm, the just not being able to cope with day-to-day life. Um, and I realized, that place when I got to that place and started experiencing all those symptoms, I really um, took time to get to know myself and collected all these tools to rise and come out of the other side, like I said, feeling stronger, sexier, and more empowered. Like you said in my bio, I do feel
Mhm.
that's possible.
Mhm.
But you can't just patch it up and expect to move forward without making any changes. There's a lot of inner work of acceptance and compassion towards ourselves that's necessary to stepping into midlife. And yeah, I followed, the traditional path of womanhood, not thinking that I would. You mentioned, yeah, I didn't get married till I was 35. Started having kids at 36, and kind of immediately started following that traditional path of womanhood because that's what I saw. My parents, my mother,
Yeah.
my
Right.
grandmothers, all
That's
doing
right
that, right?
along.
So
Yeah.
being the perfect mother, the dutiful wife, people
Yeah. It's like
pleaser.
the clock is
Uh,
ticking and you got to go with the children next, you know?
Yes, exactly. And my husband and I had a very short courtship. We went from that fiery, passionate desire that you often experience when you fall in love to getting married and going straight to having children, 3 children in a span of 5 years. I wanted it to happen quickly because the clock was ticking, as you said. I
The
was in
clock
my
is ticking.
40s.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
in my 40s when I was done, went straight from childbirthing to breastfeeding to play dates to into perimenopause, but I had no idea what was happening. You know, it, the,
Play dates to perimenopause. I love it.
the,
The new
it
thing.
was
Uh
the
oh, we
anxiety
froze.
that came out of nowhere that hit me like when I was driving with my kids in the backseat of the car. Um, Insomnia, low mood, and of course, this had a knock-on effect on my intimate life, and I had no understanding at that time. It was like 2018. Um,
Yeah.
Perimenopause wasn't being spoken about. I hadn't even heard of the word. I had no understanding or language to communicate
Yeah.
with my husband, with my doctor, or even my girlfriends. I went doctor to doctor to doctor. They told me you're just a tired, stressed out mom. You're feeling a little bit of anxiety. Here's some
Yeah.
beta
Yeah.
blockers or some antidepressants.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, and there was just this enormous sense of shame that I was getting old, and um, it had a big impact on my intimate life. I felt my sex life was over, so
Mhm.
that was when I decided to dive into this inner work, take pleasure literally into my own hands, and I spent the following
Yeah.
15 years traveling the world. I was already living in Europe at the time. I was living in London. We were there for work. And I just traveled to study with different experts in Spain and Amsterdam and France. I learned and in London, I went back to school and got a degree in nutritional therapy. I studied
Nice.
yoga and meditation.
Yeah.
I trained with renowned sexuality experts, just researching and exploring powerful mind body tools to
Hmm.
form a deeper connection with my body, to awaken pleasure and sensuality. And that is what has led me to uh, where I am now as a women's health and sexual wellness coach. I want women to get to know themselves better, to feel connected to their bodies, and really embrace midlife as a new stepping stone for living their best lives.
Hmm.
So that's what my work entails.
That's wonderful. Did you like, we've talked about this from, from your podcast, but like how much information we got from, siblings, parents, whatever, culture around menopause and perimenopause. It's like mum's the word, right?
Exactly. I think the only sex talk I received was from my grandmother, and I think she still is with me today. She's my guardian angel. She would say to me when I would visit her, "Your body is a temple, respect it, and don't let anyone in." That's all she told me. And that's all. And I understood. I was a teenager by then, so I knew. I
Oh,
understood.
I
It's
really
like,
wanted to the temple.
don't have sex. Don't have
Yeah.
sex.
Yeah.
But sex
Yeah.
wasn't first spoken about in my family at all.
Wow.
But you know what? It was all around me. I mean, I was very aware from a young age that sexuality was a natural.
Because everyone else is talking
You
about it,
know, I
right?
come because, well, everyone else is expressing it in some way. My family is from Latin America. We love
Yeah.
color. We love music. We love dance. My,
Yeah.
my parents divorced when I was young, and so my mother belonged to had a group of friends that were all divorcees, and they discreetly took
I think I
on
lost you.
lovers and boyfriends, and my father did too. I went to late night parties where they dressed in um, very sexy dresses and danced all night. So
Mhm.
I just got all these messages, right? That this is what being feminine
Yeah.
is about. It's about expressing your sexuality, but,
Yeah.
but, don't, you have to be a nice
Don't have
girl.
it though.
Save
Yeah.
yourself for marriage. Don't be a
Yeah.
slut because
Yeah.
what are people going to
Yeah.
think? And I sense this really intense fear over
Hmm.
accessing any kind of knowledge that would bring me closer to my sexuality. So there was a lot of silencing. There were a lot of secrets all around me.
Oh
And I think
yeah.
that silencing, I think a lot of us, I think, uh, I think what we're seeing now is a lot of unmuting of that silence that has to do
Yeah.
with sexuality, menopause, and aging. Thanks to doctors like you and advocates, there's this collective unmuting from this silence around what
Absolutely.
it's like to be midlife women, especially stepping into, um, very, you know, powerful time of life and owning her sexuality, owning her power, owning her purpose. I don't think, you know, the patriarchy wants us to step into
No,
this part of
no.
life feeling this way. So I love that you're talking about it and you have this podcast and you're empowering women with knowledge. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of been my mission too. I
Right.
is to unmute that silence. That's why
Unmute.
I started my podcast. That's why
Mhm.
I talk so openly about sexuality and menopause in midlife, because
Mhm.
I really do. It's a new chapter in our lives to embrace our lived experience, our
Mhm.
wisdom, um, and our sexual selves and our
Yeah.
power.
No, absolutely. And that whole idea of what the community will think about you is very pervasive in the South Asian
Oh my
community too.
goodness, yes.
There's like a whole idea of what they say, what's we call it log kya kahenge, which is like what will people think if they see you acting like this or behaving like this, or how it reflects. It's a negative reflection on. But I think that inhibits a lot of people from like really even educating themselves, right? Like nobody's telling you to go do stuff, but at least know your body and educate yourself on what's happening. And so I think that's been a driving force for so many of us that we were muted for so long, like you said. I mean, look at Halle Berry on Capitol Hill screaming, she's in menopause.
I love
It's
that.
like, that
Yeah.
is, I love it. It's like pure unmuting. You're right. Um, but you would say that's part of, the culture that you grew up with as well, that is like wondering
Definitely.
the shame around what you're doing and what people think.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, I used to hear that all the time. What will people think? And it took me a lot of work, a lot of work with therapists and my own inner
Yeah.
work to let
Yeah.
go of that languaging. Because when I started being a parent, a mom, I didn't want to pass that on to them. I just
Yeah.
didn't. And so it took a lot of work to undo a lot of those cultural narratives and limiting beliefs. So, and I have a daughter. I have a daughter, and I don't want her to grow up with that same feeling of shame around her sexual expression. And I know you posted the other day. You had a podcast about how do we teach our kids about sex. I also have boys, and so yeah, I want to be really open with them. My husband and I are totally open with them about sexuality, and we do the sex talks, and they don't want to hear it from us, but
Yeah.
but
You then to
yeah. And
some
you know what, Shamina, they do. It's funny because
yeah.
my boys, now that they're dating and they're having relationships with women, they call us. they call us from college. They're all in college,
Yeah.
and they talk to us about it. My daughter isn't yet. She's still very independent. She doesn't want,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
she wants to be her own person, but they call us and we talk to them about it. And it's so wonderful that they feel comfortable enough to come to us and talk to about us. My daughter still hasn't come forth with sharing anything about her dating life. But yeah, our
Yeah.
boys are very open to receiving advice from us, because they want to understand what's happening. It's such an intense period when you meet someone and you fall in love and you feel all these endorphins and hormones racing through your body and you're trying to make
Yes.
sense of it, right?
Yes.
So it's very real, and I'm so glad that they come to us, talk to us about
I agree. And I think it's just like, we do the same. We just want to make sure they know the right language, the right terminology. Like, I think I've told you that I've done the puberty talk at my kid's school, and I take my vulva puppet with me and I tell the, and it's so funny because there was, at one point, one year, there was a teacher that was like in her 40s and was like, I had no idea that it was called a vulva this whole life. So it's very interesting because, the education needs to be done. But I think that, just making sure they have the right language to talk about it even is important, and not to shame them around it. It's something that it is our job, because, that kind of stuff leads to health problems, honestly. Like, I see patients who hold a lot of, sexual shame and, negativity towards sex, who end up with, like, these involuntary contractions of their pelvic floor, vaginismus, sometimes related to that, and anxiety. And they can't, when they want to have penetrative sex, it's like your whole life you're told not to have it. And then it's finally time for you to do it and you can't do it. Right. That's what a lot of my women of color experiences that grow up within an environment that's kind of had, more sex shaming than not. So hopefully we can prevent that for future girls and women.
Definitely, definitely. And even when it comes to, I was actually having a conversation yesterday on my podcast with someone around breast health. We don't even
Yeah.
talk to our daughters about breast health or about their breasts until they become mothers and start breastfeeding, right?
Yeah.
Or when or when it has to do with a partner and giving pleasure to a partner, or
Yeah.
when we have to
Yeah.
think about breast cancer as this thing. It's like we don't own our breasts. Our breasts belong to cancer, to babies, and to our partners. And so,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
True,
really,
actually.
and having this relationship with our breasts from this place of uh, love, tenderness, and even pleasure, right? And as not even as a means of connecting with yourself from pleasure, but also as a means of self-checking for anything, sinister that might be coming up. Because I know that more and more younger women are being diagnosed with breast cancer than ever before, as as our younger women potentially stepping into premature menopause. That's a whole
Yeah.
sector that we don't even talk about. So that's why
Yeah.
I
And
want my
they're
daughter
mental. They're very traumatized.
I want my daughter to be aware of those things about
Yeah.
sexuality, about breast health, about menopause, all those things, because
All the things. Yeah.
it's really so important that they
Yeah.
are armed with that knowledge before
Yeah.
they step into other responsibilities and
Absolutely.
or comes out of nowhere.
Absolutely. My 5 and 12-year-old girls call it Scary Perry in my house. They're like, wait, is this mama or is this Scary Perry? Well, I want to get into like what brought you into coaching and what that entails. I talked to obviously a lot of different experts, and the whole field of coaching is really blooming in different ways. And I think that a lot of people in the medical profession, or even like psychologists, sometimes question the merit of coaching, where I've seen that it's actually like, a really important part of, an integrative program to get you to a better place, right? Where I think that, if there weren't these gaps in healthcare, right? If we had like all the time in the world to speak to patients and to educate them and to rewire their brain, which I think a lot of what coaching is about is rewire. I mean, you let me know what you do, but it's like, from my understanding, it's kind of wiring and interpreting, like how you sort of view things so that you can embrace things better. But obviously there are so many gaps in, medical care and healthcare and in the wellness arena, that this is an area that is needed for so many women. So, tell me how you got into the coaching arena, and tell me and then we can talk about what sessions are like, and how you approach coaching.
Sure. So, about earlier about the inner work of menopause. I think with all the awareness and education going on about menopause by amazing doctors like yourself, you of course, I understand you have to focus on the physical symptoms and how to manage and alleviate them, and um, it tends to lead to women searching for a quick fix. It's almost like putting a band-aid on it and hoping they'll carry on like normal. And hormone therapy is great for that. It does help alleviate symptoms. But the truth is, I do feel while menopause is life altering, it can also be a life affirming transformation. And so um, and this transformation is uncomfortable not only because of the changes that are visible on the outside, but because of who we're becoming on the inside. So
Right.
I feel menopause is a transformative process. It's an invitation to get to know ourselves better,
Yeah.
to empower ourselves with knowledge, to upgrade our physical, mental, and emotional health to the best version possible,
Yeah.
to really embrace it as a new chapter in our lives. And so, while the medical aspect is great for addressing the physical symptoms, I work with women on the psycho emotional aspect, this mindset shift.
Mindset, right?
Yeah, mindset
Mindset.
shift around stepping into this new stage of life. And so, what I find that, and this was my case too, it also happened to me, right? I thought, okay, I'll just put a patch on it. I believe in hormone therapy, by the way. I will never let go of my estrogen patch till the day I die.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
but I do feel there's a lot of kind of psycho emotional stuff that happens that
Yeah.
changes when we step into life. Our bodies are changing. Our hormones are changing. Uh, our sexuality is changing. And how do we deal with all of these changes? And so
Mhm.
it really takes a mindset shift, and I guide women to really embracing this new stage of life,
Mhm.
making peace with their bodies, and really shifting their mindsets to see what they want more of, not less of. What do they want more of? Do they want more strength? Do they want more fitness? Do they want to feel more pleasure? Do they want um, more more purpose? Do they want to pivot and find a new sense of purpose or a new passion project? So I help women really kind of sift through all the limiting beliefs that are out there around aging, around midlife, around menopause,
Yeah.
and set goals in terms of their health, in terms of their purpose, and in terms of their sexuality. And so, when it comes to sexual wellness, it includes, how you care for and speak to your body. Includes body image, body literacy. How do you connect to your body? The narratives we carry around sex and pleasure, shame that we talked about, and really getting to know ourselves in a different way. So I take women on this journey of self-exploration and self-discovery, and really getting to know themselves better, really getting them to listen to their bodies. You hear so much about listen to your body. What does that really mean?
What does
It
it mean?
means
Yeah.
it means slowing down
Yeah.
and adopting certain mindfulness-based practices that create this lens of awareness, of tuning in to your body, so you know the messages that your body is sending to you. What is your body asking of you in terms of
Mm.
rest, connection, movement, nutrition? And so I work with women to set goals around those main pillars of their health: movement, nutrition, sexual health, and mental and emotional health as well. And so we work on setting goals and establishing new habits and shifting pre-existing attitudes and perceptions, and really getting them to make healthy and informed decisions so they can be the best versions of themselves physically and mentally. And I feel that you know a lot of women need some hand holding through this midlife process. I certainly did. I mean, you know, I consider myself a pretty educated woman. I got an undergraduate and graduate degree. I traveled the world. I'm pretty open minded, but I rely on coaches because sometimes you need someone walking alongside you because again I had no role models. We don't have role models of midlife women stepping into midlife being their most powerful, sexy and empowered selves. We have role models that say you become invisible. You, you become your wisdom isn't of value. You're not of value anymore. So it's really about giving women a new template for midlife. So that's what my coaching is involved
That's wonderful.
in doing.
More than are some of our reproductive parts. So that is very
Exactly.
important. No,
Yeah.
I was saying when you decided like, okay, this is something like you want to help other women do, it takes a lot of intestinal fortitude to kind of put yourself out in the world and like, get out there and do all this stuff. Did you need coaching yourself? Because one of my good friends is a coach for professional women, and I often call her all the time and like, what help me? And did you feel like you needed to be coached into that as well?
Well, what I started doing was, I started as first a yoga and mindfulness teacher, and I started sharing my story in my workshops, in my retreats,
Yeah.
in my events,
Uh-huh.
and women were coming up to me and saying, what you're saying resonates.
Resonates.
It's my story too, and no one is talking about this. So I think I just felt like there was not enough normalizing of these conversations and this sort of internal fire, this fire in my belly of like, gosh, this stuff has been silenced for so long, what we
Wow.
talked about earlier.
Yeah.
And I don't know,
Yeah.
something kind of just like the lid was just blown open. I'm like, I just need to start talking about this. So something
Right.
within me just said, you need to talk about this. You need to put yourself
Yeah.
out there. So I didn't really need so much coaching around that because it was just something that came from inside
It
me
was a
and
drive.
maybe
It
some
was internal
anger.
drive.
Anger.
Mhm.
It was a
Yeah.
drive. It was anger from just feeling this part of our lives, sexuality, menopause, just being silenced for so long. So I
Dismissed.
felt I had to help women, unsilence that part of themselves and really be able to and like I said, embrace menopause and their sexuality. So I
Mhm.
didn't need coaching so much for that, but I did train as a coach. I did certify as a women's health coach. I certified as a life coach. You're taught certain skills in coaching in terms of
Mhm.
how to engage in active listening with a client,
Mhm.
how to guide a client through setting new habits, setting new goals. I don't prescribe or give a diagnosis. I
Sure.
like to work with experts like yourself, Dr. Rahman. So I will
Mhm.
give women, um, referrals to
Right.
gynecologists, to pelvic health PTs,
Yeah.
if they need to get physical or medical support. So I don't diagnose. I help women set goals, establish new
Mhm.
habits, and if there's something that they really want to do, for example, sometimes I do talk them through the pros and cons, or I give them information about menopause hormone therapy. They're on the fence about menopause
Yeah.
therapy because
Yeah.
they want to do things naturally. Actually, most women come to me because they want to
Uh,
do things naturally. They don't want to do
yeah.
hormone therapy.
And
So they want to do the psycho emotional, the holistic stuff first.
sure.
They want to try
Sure.
that. And if I see that, they're having a really hard time,
Yeah.
they're experiencing all these symptoms of not feeling like myself.
Yeah.
I will say, hormone therapy um, can be considered as part of your toolkit. And this
Right.
is who you can reach out to. This is where you can get information if you want to
Mhm.
consider that. And if they want to start hormone therapy and there's so much fear and shame because they've been uh, taught by by either their culture of origins or by their wellness circles that natural is best, then I talk them through that. We talk through the limiting straying from the natural is best and going and
Yeah.
trying something more medically based, like hormone therapy. So, there are a lot of different things that women come to me with, but that's one instance where I would probably talk them through a medical option so that they
Right.
can feel comfortable doing that. And then I tell them, these are the questions you want to ask to advocate for
Yes.
yourself.
Yeah.
This is what you want to take into your doctor's
Yeah.
appointment. This is the
Yeah.
homework you need to do.
Yeah.
And these are the different options you have. So go and talk to them about them with your doctor. And
No,
don't leave until you get the answers you need. And if you don't get the answers you need, go and get a second opinion. So
I
women don't know these things. They don't know these things. Like, we talked on my podcast how there's this reverence for doctors and you just question doctors.
mhm.
You,
Okay.
you and I talked about how there's this reverence for doctors and we don't
Yeah.
question what doctors say, but we have to
Mhm.
empower ourselves with knowledge. And like you said yourself said, right, you're not handed these things on a silver platter, right? You have to advocate for yourself in the doctor's office because it's
Yeah.
just not going to happen.
I mean, all of us do. I mean, I'm in the thick of it. I'm a medical, clinician. I'm a doctor. I'm in this field, and I still, when I have to seek help for myself, I have to like push the envelope too. Like I have to really advocate for myself too.
Mm.
So,
And sometimes seek second and third opinions,
I think,
and sometimes that has to happen out of pocket, unfortunately. But you know what my attitude is right now, Dr. Rahman? Okay, I'm midlife. I'm in midlife. Okay, um, some of us in midlife have come here. We have perhaps our savings for retirement. We're thinking about that.
yeah,
My savings, everything for my savings are going to go towards my health and living the longest, healthiest life I can go. I rather put all my savings into that than
yes,
picking, a luxury resort holiday.
yeah,
So
absolutely,
I'll pay that, the extra $100, extra
yeah,
$200 for a telehealth consultation with the doctor.
yeah,
I'll pay out of pocket for an extra
right.
second or third opinion because that's more important to me than sitting
There's
at
nothing
a
more
resort.
important than your good health, right? And to have that, how like Dr. Mary Claire says about, her nursing home prevention program,
Exactly.
it's really about, getting to a point where you're not that person that, that has to be so dependent on others, right? You still want to live independently. And you want to be able to be with your friends. You want to be able to think and not have cognitive, distress, whether or not that's dementia or anxiety, whatever the case may be. You want to try to prevent that. And the best way to do that is to use all these tools in our toolkit, to improve our diet, exercise, to get the right medications if you need it, and to get that mindset shift. I think you're totally right. Like some patients don't take hormones because their mindset is still back from the 2000s, or their parents, their mom didn't take it. And, their mom says, why would you take it? I went through it without a problem, but they're actually suffering in silence and there's no reward for that. Like you don't get a badge of honor for suffering.
Definitely. And I think some of us grew up with those narratives, right? That to be a woman,
Mhm.
you entail suffering. I definitely got those messages so often from my mother. I would come to her feeling stressed and overwhelmed with three little kids, and she
Yeah.
would just say, that's it. She would just, look at me, sympathetically. And she, of
Right.
course, would try to help out, but that's it. You got to
You got to
suffer.
push through. Yeah. You
You
just
got to
got to
push
push
through.
through.
Yeah.
No, it's not okay. We shouldn't suffer like that. Tell me a little bit about your retreats and stuff that you have done or that you're involved with, because I know that you
Yeah.
mentioned that you have some of that, and I'm just curious to know what those are like for my listeners.
Yeah. So I lead long weekend retreats, 3 or 4 day retreats. Sometimes I lead 7 day retreats. And it's
Wow.
a really an opportunity for women to go to a beautiful surroundings,
Yeah.
beautiful location, and
Uh-huh.
totally check out of their busy day-to-day lives and do
Yeah.
something for themselves
How
and
rejuvenating.
to do it in community with other people. So I include wellness talks where I give information on menopause. What is menopause? The menopause
Mm.
transition. So it's their educational talks about
Sure.
hormones, about
Yeah.
menopause, about sexual health. We do yoga, we do mindfulness practices, and I talk to them about if it's more focused on sexuality, we talk about sexual wellness, what that means, and have open and honest conversations about sexual wellness and what that means. And so I find when women gather together, it's
Mhm.
incredible. They just let down their guards, right? It takes maybe,
Yes.
a day or so, but they let
Yeah.
down their guards. And when they're in a community of women, they're so open and honest and
Yeah.
about sharing their experiences, and they learn from each other, and they realize that they're not alone,
Hmm.
and they leave feeling more empowered, ready to take this information and apply it into their own lives, ready to bring these conversations into their families, into their partnerships. We do workshops, we do little kind of I call dyads, where I bring women together and have them practice speaking or communicating what they're feeling to a partner, right? How
Oh,
would they
oh,
talk
that's
about
beautiful.
what they're
Yeah.
experiencing with a partner? And it's very vulnerable. It feels very awkward, but
Hmm.
that's part of the process of, being able to open up and normalize these conversations with family members.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're just really empowering um, opportunities for women to connect with other women, to kind of do that mindset shift and really connect with their bodies, deepen their knowledge, and really take this work into their real lives and step into this new chapter of their lives feeling more empowered and armed with knowledge.
That sounds wonderful to me. Tell me some of the places you've been.
Well,
Listen, Thai listeners.
Well, I was living in Europe for 16 years
Yeah.
in the UK. So I did a few retreats in the countryside of England, in the Cotswolds. I did one in the
Mhm.
south of France. I'm
Oh,
planning one soon in Costa Rica. So now that I'm in the US, living in the US, I'm hoping to plan one in Costa Rica. And I'm looking for a location in here in Austin where I live.
yeah.
Actually, so I'm planning on doing for anyone who's local or anyone who wants to come and spend the weekend with me. There's a beautiful little hotel nearby, and then I hold the workshops. They can stay in the hotel, but they can come to my home, and because I don't have enough room to house that many people, but I do have a beautiful property with a yoga studio and a yoga deck and a swimming pool and a hot tub. And so, because you can't live in Texas without a swimming pool or a
Yeah.
hot tub,
Yeah.
so I hold the workshops in my home, and so women come to my house and spend the day here, and we connect here at the group, and then we go out to some fun places in Austin for dinner, or dancing or enjoying the music scene,
My God,
and
I'm gonna
then
come. I'm gonna
yeah,
come.
come, come lead one word with me, Dr. Rahman,
Oh my
please.
God,
I'd
it
love for
sounds
you to
like
come.
so much fun.
Yeah,
I haven't never been to Austin, but I hear great things about how
you're
like it's
you have
fun.
an open invitation, Dr. Rahman.
Oh, okay. I'm down for that. Well, that sounds great, Gabriella. I mean, no, I just wanted to, as we conclude, 'cause I want to be mindful of your time. When my whole tagline is I'm here to educate so you can advocate for yourself. How, if you had to tell our listeners, like the best way to advocate for yourself when you're in a medical scenario, um, how have you done it in the past? How do you coach your clients to do it? Give us a few tips for our listeners.
So when I coach women, I guide them in this kind of somatic experience.
Hmm.
Somatics means tuning into your body and being able to name and identify sensations and feelings. Really,
Hmm.
really put a label on them. So it's not so much I'm feeling stressed and overwhelmed. It's more of like I'm feeling this sense of um, kind of stuckness or coldness in my
Hmm.
belly, or I'm feeling this sense of burn. We take it a little bit deeper when it comes to sexual wellness. We say
Hmm.
I'm feeling this burning or itching sensation here, and being able to name exactly where on their vulva or where
Yeah. Yeah.
in their pelvic area they're feeling it. So being able to develop the language of sensations. So sensations, I say, is the poetry of your body. Being able to have a vocabulary to name what you're feeling. hot, cold, burning, itching, tingling, so
Yeah.
instead of just saying it hurts
Yeah. Yeah.
or it's uncomfortable, having a broader language and vocabulary of sensations is going
Mhm.
to empower you to have that conversation with your doctor. So I guide women to develop that language of sensations and then to write it down. Come in with a list of uh, sensations or things that you're experiencing. Come in with a list of questions. Sometimes I'll help women develop that list of questions, right? We won't make it too long because we know your time is precious, but say, these are the questions I want to, go into your doctor's office and say, these are the questions, I have a list of questions here I want to address with you. I
Mhm.
hope we have time to address all of them. And the doctor may say, well, we may have to make a second appointment, in which case you say, okay, we'll make a second appointment, but I want to get through this list of questions. Yeah, these are the
I love when
priorities.
patients have those lists and they
Yeah.
actually come in.
And to notice, right? When we do some of the mindfulness practices that I teach, this has to do a lot with nervous system regulation. If you feel a doctor is, and I know you wouldn't do this, Dr. Armand, if you feel a doctor is dismissing you or making you feel less than or less, feeling, you're not feeling good about what the doctor is telling you, you're going to feel that, right? You're going to feel that in that appointment. You're going to feel that as like a lot of women feel it like a stab to their heart or like a sinking feeling in their throat or like a knot in their, they feel it in that appointment. So to be aware of that and
Yeah.
to speak up and say, I don't appreciate the way that you're speaking to me. And this is not helpful to me. Speak up in the appointment. So, and women most know it. It usually happens when they leave the appointment. They're like, I left that appointment. I don't feel good about it. So learning,
I should have said something. I
I
should have
should have
said,
said something. I should have said something. So getting women to connect, have that bodily connection to their emotions, to their sensations, so they say something in the appointment. And again, if they felt the appointment didn't go well, say thank you very much, be respectful, be kind to the doctor, right? Because the doctor probably doesn't know, right? Maybe they're not aware. Maybe they
sometimes they're
haven't
not
been,
aware of
they're
their
not
own.
aware, and then go and make another opinion with get a second opinion. I also recommend that women collect all their blood tests. I have like a whole folder, binder of
Yeah.
blood tests I've had over the years, of
Ultrasound.
tests, ultrasounds, bone density scan, so
Yeah.
that you can go in and say, well, last year it was this, and you're telling me this year it's this. What
Yeah.
what can I do about that? So make sure you
Yeah.
collect all of your paperwork, take it
Yeah.
into the office with you, come in armed with a set of questions, and really come in with that self knowing that you can speak up to what you're feeling in your body in that moment.
Yeah. That's wonderful. I think that's great because I feel like, I feel like patients get the most out of their appointments. Some doctors are like, oh, I hate when, they Google stuff or whatever. I mean, if you're Googling the right information, it's great. Obviously, there's a lot of misinformation on the internet. And that's what we worry about. And on, TikTok and on social media, there's a lot of misinformation where people are pushing their own narratives. But, when you have the correct information about how these, medications and how these processes work, I think that it's wonderful when a patient comes in knowing exactly. I mean, I have patients that come in with all the books, like, oh, I read Dr. Mary Claire books or I read Dr. Sharon Malone's book, and I know exactly what I want. And then we talk about it if it's a right fit for them, and then we talk about their, insurance will cover it or whatever. But I love when they come in so empowered because it makes for a very smooth appointment.
Yeah, and I think, and again, not to be disrespectful, but I think if a doctor says you can't do this and you
Yeah,
feel that maybe you can, or you've heard from someone else that you can,
yeah,
then go and get a second opinion.
absolutely.
I just have one quick story. I went to my doctor's office, I have a great OBGYN here in
Yeah.
Austin, but I went to see her nurse practitioner because
Mm-hmm.
my doctor was so busy. I use a progestin IUD.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was time to have it taken out and put a new one in. She took it out and told me, I can't put a new one in. You're too old. And I'm like, "But- but-" so So,
Oh,
I'm sensitive to progesterone. I
yeah.
have a
You
long
can't take
history of
systemic. Yeah.
progesterone sensitivity. I need that IUD.
Mm-hmm.
And so I left the office without the IUD and without a prescription. I'm saying I'm coming back and
Uh-huh.
having an appointment with the doctor.
Yeah.
So I came back and had an appointment with the doctor, and I said, "Your NP told me that I couldn't get an IUD placed in." And she put it in.
Uh-huh.
She's like, "Okay, when do you want to make an appointment? Put it in."
Yes. Yes.
So this was the
And
same
not to
practice.
bash like nurse, there are a lot of great nurse practitioners out there that,
Yeah, yeah,
have the
yes.
knowledge and the fund knowledge. I think that just like any clinician, sometimes they just don't know. And then,
They're going by the what's been written up in certain
yes,
studies, and they maybe don't have a broader knowledge, or they
right.
don't have so no, not to bash NPs. I'll go
Yeah.
and see an NP again, but
Yeah.
I'm glad that I left that appointment with saying, you know what, I'm going to go and talk to the doctor about this. I
Yeah.
want to get a second
Absolutely.
opinion.
And that's pure advocacy, right? Right there. Like you're like, I think I've read better and I know that this is a possibility. I mean, there are some cases I think where like IUDs are not covered by insurance in certain age groups, which is very upsetting. But I've actually fought many battles and gotten, them covered through their pharmaceutical plans. But sometimes, we've run into that hiccup where like if someone is actually in menopause, but the perimenopausal period, usually you don't have trouble getting it covered for the most part. But I think that, that's the only way I could see someone not getting an IUD for some reason if it just didn't get covered by insurance. But then you either pay out of pocket or you try to defend or you try to get a prior authorization or try to speak to, the insurance company to get it covered. And I actually feel like that will probably change too. I mean, because one of the indications for, the progestin IUD is not only contraception, it's actually, heavy or irregular bleeding. And so, sometimes it's a matter of just knowing that that's the reason you're getting it.
Yeah, and I had a history of that. I had a history of that, and
Yeah. So yours
yeah.
could have been easy. Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I was sitting there half naked, and she's like, "I'm not putting a new one in." And I'm like,
Ooh.
"Oh."
Oh my, like, let's talk about it before you get into a half naked position, at least. Like, then you're very vulnerable. You're like, well, I guess I can't say anything right now because I don't have my pants on.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
no, I quickly got dressed, and I'm like, I'm just coming back. I'm making an appointment. So I
Well, good for you because you knew
yeah.
better, and hopefully that nurse practitioner learned something at that day.
Mm.
Um, but that is exactly what we try to recommend is just advocating for yourself because sometimes, no one's like, a lot of my colleagues say this, no one's going to come save you. You got to really do it yourself. And so,
Absolutely.
I think that, that speaks volumes to, to your ability to advocate for yourself. So I'm glad you did that.
And going back to some of these events that we've met at, right? We met at the Let's Talk Menopause
Yeah.
event and
Yeah.
this Liberty Road event where women are coming in. These events are selling out, right?
Like
These events are
droves.
selling out,
Like,
and yes, and it's so wonderful to see that women want to receive this information. I mean, women, Gen X women are smart women. We're smart,
mhm,
we're intelligent, we know we're
right.
resourceful,
And we've been
right?
through a lot of shit.
We've been through a lot of shit. So we want to get the facts, and to just finish that thought, yeah, to think of that we're the first generation of women receiving this groundbreaking information that's coming out, all this education that you're doing,
Yeah.
Dr. Rahman, that all the doctors, the menopause doctors, Dr. Haver, Dr.
Yeah.
Nyla, Dr. Jessica
Yeah.
Shepard, Dr. Kelly Kasperson, all of you are bringing this information, and we're the generation that's listening to it for the very first time. And you know that we're
Hmm.
going to do something with that information.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you see it with all these, like, yeah, like even the creation of Liberty Road was, really because, okay, now we're going to pivot and, do something else with the middle third of our lives. And so I think that, that speaks volumes to our ability to transition and to adapt and to fight for ourselves.
Exactly. And to know that we're still of value to our
Of value.
society, to our communities, and to
Mhm.
our workplaces. We have so much to offer, not only
Yes.
our lived experience, but like I said,
It's
our
funny.
resourceful.
Julia Louise Dreyfus, from like Seinfeld and Veep and all those. She started a podcast, and that's what she says. Like she interviews people that are wiser than her because nobody listens to like older women, right? Like they just get put aside in media. They get put aside, And so I love that she does that too, because you learn a lot from these people who have been through so much.
I love that podcast. I've listened to a few of those
Yeah.
episodes.
Isn't it great? Yeah.
They're beautiful, beautiful.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Gabriella. It's been my pleasure to have you here, and I hope to have you back in the future. I will in the show notes put all the information to how you can get in touch with Gabriella and do some one-on-one sessions with her. And then also, like, if there's any new retreats, we can all sign up and go to Austin.
Yes, come to Austin for my next retreat. I'll let you know about it. You'll be the first one to know, Dr. Ramon, and hopefully you can come down and help me and be a part of it.
Oh, that would be wonderful. I'd love to just, spend a little time on myself. All right. Well, thank you so much. And I appreciate you. And thanks for tuning into Gyno Girl Presents Sex, Drugs, and Hormones. I'm Dr. Samina Rahman, sex med gynecologist and menopause specialist in downtown Chicago, and a clinical assistant professor of OBGYN at Northwestern Feinberg School of Medicine. I'm here to educate so you could advocate for yourself. So please take notes and join me for my next podcast. And you can join me on YouTube and also Instagram. But hopefully you guys gained some information that you can take back to your clinicians, to your husbands, to your wives, to whoever else, so that sisters, brothers, mothers, so that they can learn to advocate for themselves as well. Thank you very much. Second, please subscribe to this podcast. I'd love for you to be a follower and learn as much as you can about the things that we're going to talk about with all the people on our journey. Please review us on Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. These reviews really help. Review us, comment, tell me what else you want to hear to get more information. My practice website is www.cgcchicago.com. My website for Gyno Girl is www.gynogirltv.com. My Instagram is Gyno Girl, so please follow me for some good content. Additionally, I have a YouTube channel, Gyno Girl TV, where I love to talk about all these things on YouTube. And please subscribe to my newsletter, Gyno Girl News, which will be available on my website. I will see you next time.